In this video, I'm going to show you how to do the graphs for the periodic table lab. So I have one done for you. So the one thing I wanted to show you is your x-axis is always going to be the same. So there are two types of graphs you're going to do. One graph is going to be for period 2, which is from lithium straight across to neon. And then the other graph, you'll do electronegativity for period 2, and then you'll do it again for group 2. So for group 2, it's going to be from BE straight down to RA. So don't confuse those. And then on the x-axis, you're going to put your elements. So if you notice, what I did was I just spaced them out 2 per box. I just did the elements in period 2, and then when I do the group 2, I'll just do the elements in group 2, but there's less of them, so I spaced them out a little bit more. I'll show you that in a second. And the tricky part is you're going to have to come up with a scale on your own. So this first scale I did by 0.25, but looking back, I probably could have went by 0.2 and then it would have pushed the scale up a little bit higher. But a rule of thumb is as long as you are using more than half the graph, so as long as you use more than half, call this the halfway point, then you've used enough of the graph, all right? And that's typical. I would like to see you use the whole graph if possible, but it doesn't always work out like that. So like the way I did this was fine. I used the bulk of the graph and I didn't go back and redo it because I thought I could have changed my scale by a little bit. It wouldn't change what I see in the graph that much. All right. And so the issue you're going to have is you're going to have to make the choice. You're going to have to look at these numbers and say, all right, what does the electronegativity do? So when I looked at period 2, I looked at these and I said, well, it starts at 1 and it works its way up to 4.0 for period 2. So I had two options. I started mine at 0, but I could have put a page break in and started it at 1, and then I could have stretched it out even more to get an even a bigger scale on the y, but you don't necessarily have to do that. And then on my y-axis would be electronegativity is what goes on my y. So now it says label all points, use appropriate spacing. This is fine because I have these symbols down here. I don't have to relabel the symbol, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. And then the questions at the bottom. It says, what's the general trend, or what's the trend in any period of the atomic number? The reason I say any period, because if you know the trend for one period, you know the trend for all the periods. And then question 2, again, I'm bringing this up a lot. What causes the trend? So I'm going to be looking for those in the answers. And so this is what your first graph is going to look like. I'm only doing one of them for you. Be aware for for group 2, if you can see this, the electronegativity goes down to 0.9 and it only goes as high as 1.6. So the electronegativity for group 2, if I use this same scale, it's only going to go between here and here. That will literally, the whole graph will be in that one little range. So what you're going to have to do when you do group 2, which is going to look like this. Notice I'm spacing them out a little bit more just because there's less of them, so I want to use the whole sheet if possible. You're going to have to put a page break in, and you're going to start somewhere around, probably 0.9 would be ideal, but you could start at 0.5 or 0.6 or 0.7, whatever you want, but you're going to put a page break in to save a little bit of space, and then you're going to use a much smaller scale. Each box is going to be worth much less than what I did. You might be able to get away with going by 0.1s. But the key is this graph, you need to use at least half the graph. I'm going to be looking for more like 2/3, 3/4, if not the whole thing. So scaling for you is going to be different, and I'm not going to scale them all for you. The scale for the X will always be the same. If you are doing period 2, it's going to be these elements. And if you're doing group 2, it's going to be these elements. That's never going to change. Just be careful. It says it right up here at the top, whether you're doing group or period, and that's pretty much it. Now, again, there's trends at the bottom, and the questions at the bottom are very easy. What's the trend? What's causing the trend? So we've got electronegativity that you're going to do. That shouldn't be too bad. Then you've got atomic radius for period 2. Again, your X will be the same. Your Y is going to be different because atomic radius are totally different numbers. The atomic radius for period 2 goes from 500 roughly to up to 2,000, so you're going to need a very different scale. For group 2, it goes from 90, oh, I'm sorry, that was ionization energy. For period 2, atomic radius goes from 130 down to 62, and for group 2, it goes from 99 to 211. So they are different. And then ionization energy, Those are going to be the hardest because you're going to need the biggest scale for that, because the ionization energy goes from roughly 500 to almost 2100 on your Y. So you're definitely going to need a page break in there. You're probably going to need a page break on all of them, to be perfectly honest. Electronegativity would be like the one where you might not need it, but all the others you absolutely will. And then ionization energy for group 2 goes from 900 to 500. So that one actually would use a much smaller scale, probably like 4 times smaller than the scale you use for period 2. So just be aware of that, and those are all the groups. Once they are all graphed, obviously you're going to want to submit these, or you're going to want to staple them all together. This lab's all going to be stapled together, so if you want, while you're working, you can take the staple out, but make sure you put it all together in order when you turn it in.